sure. But
I'm trying to get you one that doesn't have dirt on it.
Well, that's a dark red friend.
I know the tennis was like
that's right. I think you'd be a fun group to sit with.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's very nice.
really nice, yeah. And that's probably a couple of yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, it's 25. I drove down Saturday. My husband's on his way down right now. Right. Work Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking more for the snow now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I agree. What's that mean? That's great. Congratulations. That's really cool.
Very excited about it.
Yeah. Was it a surprise?
Well, yeah.
Did you have to do anything?
You have to apply.
Yeah, so there's probably, right, not to expect. Yeah, no, I've only done this one and the one up in Eastport. I would love to do more. I would love to see people more, interested in it.
Oh,
I apologize. Not like that. I think,
So,
Yeah.
you know, so
Right, but
it's
same time,
easy, good environment for it.
something costs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a, and I'll, I'll wrap it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone down south that did one too, Allen Library.
Oh, I did not.
Allen
No,
Library.
I did not.
Soon they want to sell this, it's good.
I have to do what? I can't wait to get to the place.
Oh, so that's why you have the two.
Yeah, that's why I have the two.
Look, okay, I wondered about that because
One's
I
an
found
LLC
the
and one's a
two.
DBA.
Okay. I found the two logos when I was trying to put together some flyers. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Right, one's colored and one's black and white. We're all really plain and simple up there. We're tired.
We're gonna go ahead and get started. Our clock here is actually 5 minutes fast, so we should be right on the dot. My name is Matt Bowes. I'm the reference librarian and assistant director here at the library. And I want to thank you for coming out this evening. I know it's cold and blustery out there, so we appreciate you making it here tonight. Come on in, folks. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I do want to mention that we have some other great events coming up, and we have bookmarks on the table over here that you can pick up if you want to put one of these on your refrigerator at home. In 2 weeks from tonight, we actually have a Humanities Council event. An author, Michael Tugius, will be here to talk about his book, Fatal Forecast. So it should be a fantastic evening, and we're co-sponsoring that with the local historical society. So you might want to put that one on your calendars and grab a reminder on the table over here. Okay. You do have an evaluation form in front of you tonight. If you don't mind giving us a little bit of feedback, we'd really appreciate that. And you can also sign up for our e-bulletin. Comes out every 2 weeks, and we send out information about our upcoming programs like tonight, other services that the library offers. So go ahead and put your email address on there as well if you'd like to join that. Okay. And that brings us to tonight's speaker, Paula Kovocses. Did I pronounce that?
No, okay.
Paula
You do that.
I like that. That's great. Paula's been here before, actually. She was here in August, and she did a presentation on seed saving. She's fantastic, so we invited her back, and we're thrilled to have her. She owns 2 businesses now. TWIG has expanded from Ware to also be in Eastport, Maine. So she's doing very well, and we're excited to have her. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise at the
I
library.
appreciate you inviting me. I love to be here. And by the way, this was, you guys probably might be from around here, but they're the library of the year. This is the library of the year. I thought that was really exciting. So I'm going to start tonight, and we're going to make this very informal because I'd like to hear feedback. I'd like to hear where you guys are at with your gardening thoughts and organics and all of that. And my talk really is going to gear towards the whys we need to go, think about going organic, and the ways of going organic may be different from what you're thinking, how to go organic. I know I have my own little way of going organic, but I want to get you thinking about your methods. So that's what I'm going to gear the talk to. I absolutely want you to interact with it, ask questions. Like he said, I'm owner of TWIG. I'm now out of Concord because I sold my house and I'm in Concord, and I'm also in Eastport, Maine. And I'm an accredited organic land care professional. What that is through NOFA. I take a certification. I keep up my certifications every year. I'm also a Maine certified landscape professional as well as a New Hampshire certified landscape professional. So I have a lot of education. Education is my thing. I absorb this stuff, and I love to pass it on to people. I went to school for horticulture in the early 90s, and when I went to school, I was taught one thing. If there's a problem in your garden, there's a chemical to solve it. And I went with that. I said, well, how could it be bad? Nobody would let us bad for our environment, we're bad for our health. You know, why would they be teaching me to use a chemical? Didn't think anything of it. And then as time goes on, I met a lot of people in the organic industry. And I went and because I'm a consultant and I consult a lot, I went to the Accredited Organic Land Care Program, took the 5-day course, walked out of there and said, no longer will I be doing anything the conventional way, it will be organic. And since then, I've started this campaign to get the word out there, and I really think that it's starting. Matt and I were talking just a little bit ago, and I think people are coming around. So I want to get you thinking tonight. How many of you right now do fertilize your lawn? How many of you use like the 4-step program? Use the 4-step program? Do you think there's chemicals in there? Well, they did a survey in Massachusetts, and I think out of the 100 people they surveyed, 90 of them thought that there were no chemicals in there. Okay, so that's where we're at. And being an organic gardener, my company, we install, we design, we do maintenance. Being an organic company, we use no products. We don't even use organic products. And I'll get more into that as we go along. So I want to start you out with this, just to get you thinking. How many of you see these on some lawns in the neighborhood? Pesticide application, keep off. And then their kids are running around on it. Okay? No pesticides. I love my family and the environment more than my lawn. I have a very good friend of mine who has 2 children with ADD, and he has ADD. And he has Chemlong come every year and spray at least 4 or 5 times a year. And I can't get it through to him that there's some sort of connection that you've got to stop. What's more important, our lawn or our children? I went to a lecture yesterday, I was telling Matt, I went to a lecture yesterday of a woman who runs a company out of Massachusetts. And what she does is she's a landscape designer. She designs landscapes that will take up contaminants out of the soil. Old gas stations, okay, that have contaminant in the soil. She'll go in and she will design a landscape that will take up contaminants out of the soil. She proceeded to tell us that Weston, Massachusetts has the best school systems, the best roads, the best houses, very wealthy community, but their groundwater is contaminated, all of it. Their soil is contaminated, all of it. But yet people want to live there because they have the great school systems, but they don't see their children running around and getting sick instantly. So we don't think of what's happening underneath. So pesticides, I love my family and the environment more than my lawn. And I wonder why you're here, because you want to have a different way of doing things, right? So these are the buzzwords. And what I want to do is, we're going to go through these buzzwords individually. And I want to hear, before I go through each of these buzzwords, what you guys think it means. So can anybody enlighten me on what they think organic means? And should we even have the word organic? Come on.
All natural.
All natural.
No chemicals. No man-made substances.
No man-made substances. Yeah, great, great. And I think that's what everybody thinks, and that's the biggest broad picture right there. No chemicals, okay? 100 years ago, we were organic, okay? And then the chemicals came in. So really, we should be called no chemicals, not organic when we go organic. What about sustainable? Using our resources wisely. And to me, this is all organic gardening. When I talk about, everything I talk about, I'm going to talk about methods And every one of these fits into organic gardening. It's not just taking a chemical and replacing it with an organic product. All of these things have to do with gardening organic. So sustainable is chopping down the tree and replenishing it, making sure that we're using our water wisely and not taking up all of our water, replenishing our water. I'll get more into methods. Biodiversity is having species of plant material, abundant species of plant material. I'll get more into that. Invasive plants. You may know a lot about invasive plants in New Hampshire. Anybody wants more information, I'll be glad to give it to you. I'll talk about that. Native and indigenous plants. We'll talk about that, why they're important, and ecosystems and habitats. All of these have to do with growing organically. So if you have a lawn that you've been treating for, I have clients that come to me and they say, I've been treating my lawn for 20 years with ChemLawn. And ChemLawn came out with this organic program, and I tried it last year. What a joke. Well, guess what? It's not going to happen overnight. When you treat your soil with chemical products, you are depleting your soil. You are taking all of those microorganisms out of your soil. It's going to take a long time for that soil to get back. And treating it organically is not going to happen overnight. You need to have a process. You need to get your soil back to snuff. And we'll talk about soils too. Okay, so again, organic, no pesticides, and it depends on who you talk to. I bet you if you talk to the government right now, it's a little bit different with them too. So I've talked about conventional versus organic products. TWIG doesn't use any organic products that are bagged up. And keeping nature in balance. That's the big picture of going organic too. Keeping nature in balance, because nature was in balance 200 years ago. And we didn't have a lot of the issues that we have now. We didn't have the invasives. We didn't have the Asian longhorn beetle. We didn't have the emerald ash borer. We didn't have Japanese beetles. Okay? They're not native here. So keeping nature in balance. Everything is connected in nature. The more in balance, the less problems you have in your gardens. So the more you do to keep nature functioning, to keep those ecosystems going, the better off you are. You're going to have less problems in your garden. Using natural resources wisely, that's a big thing. Water, sunlight, and compost. I'll talk a little bit about that. Minimizing energy and maintenance. How many have an irrigation system? No, nobody has an irrigation system. Totally unnecessary in New Hampshire. Okay? If you build your soil, your lawn soil, you don't need an irrigation system. If you have soil that is high in organic matter, you don't need an irrigation system. You don't need to water as much as you probably think you need to water if your soil is up to snuff. So let's see, build soil to reduce water usage, create biodiversity to reduce pest problems. We'll go a little bit more into that. And of course, human health. I firmly believe that there's a lot of cancer, there's a lot of ADD, there's a lot of issues out there, and I firmly believe it's because everything we breathe and eat and walk on has chemicals in it. And I'll try not to get too Fruit Loopy about that. But so sustainable, meeting the needs of the present by not compromising the needs of the future. Okay? There's a practice that we do. If you're familiar with permaculture, I'm a permaculturist at heart. Don't do much of it in my practice, but there's a practice called composting. And composting is taking a hardwood tree and cutting it down, using it for firewood, letting it sprout, and letting those sprouts get back into mature trees, cutting them down, and reusing them. That's a sustainable practice, okay? Using water off of your roof rather than out of the groundwater, sucking it out of the ground, capturing it off your roof. So sustainable gardening includes another thing that is really difficult for people to understand, but you need to know, you need to have a proper design when you're organic, when you're using a sustainable practice. You need to know where your water's coming from, where your sunlight is, where the northwest winds are. You need to know all of these things because it all ties into that organic gardening. You need to know that this place over here in your yard is someplace where a vegetable garden would be perfect. You need to know that maybe a rain garden wouldn't be perfect there. So if you want a rain garden, instead of taking that area and destroying the soil structure and making that what you want, find a better place on your property to do it. Work with nature, not against it. See what you have, assess what you have. So proper design is really important. I get a lot of clients that call me and say, oh, I want it to look pretty. Just throw it in, I want it to look pretty. I have to think of a design. I want it to function. I want that tree to be in the right place so it will get what it needs. And how many of you go to a garden center and pick out a pretty plant and then go home and say, I just gotta have this plant. You go home and you say, where am I gonna put it? And you put it somewhere, and then 2 years later it's gone. Where'd it go? Because you're not thinking about where it goes. And that's a whole process of organic gardening. Proper construction and installation. Planting it right is another thing. People tend to plant trees too deep, which if you plant your tree too deep, the tree declines. And when a tree or a plant's stressed, guess what you get? You get those insects and those diseases to come in. So doing all of these things is all part of keeping your plants healthy and keeping those nasty things away. Proper maintenance is another thing. Maintaining your plants. Knowing that in August, say you have a drought and you're growing something that, we haven't had rain in 4 weeks, but you had a month of rain in June. I've had this happen. Well, it rained for a month in June. Why should I have to water my plants in August? It rained for a whole month. Well, if you drank for a whole month, and then you said, oh, I'm not going to drink for the whole month of August, you're going to be dead. So thinking about not stressing out your plants and maintaining your plants, doing the best you can to keep them healthy. I also have clients who have every plant in the book and have extensive gardens that they can't even maintain. They cannot keep up with it. So, start out small. Make sure that you can maintain them. Using renewable resources, I've talked about that. All are techniques that incorporate low-impact methods that ensure a functional environment for future gardens. If your environment is functioning, okay, all those little critters are happy, you've got dragonflies, you've got butterflies, you've got all of that. You've got all those good insects that are preying on those bad ones. I have clients call me and say, I have insects on my black-eyed Susans. What should I spray? Okay. Well, what kind of insects do you have? Come to find out, they were hoverflies, which are pollinators, which are great. They eat aphids. They do all these good things. But yet we don't want to see those. Also, I had a client say to me, I don't want any insects in my yard, but I love butterflies. So we have to think of it as a whole picture. We have to think of it that there are good and there are bad, and they need to be in balance. Biodiversity, a measure of how many interacting species, including all living organisms, are in an ecosystem. When I go to visit a site, and what you should do is you should know what you have in your yard. You should be able to identify your trees, your weeds, everything that you have in your yard, because they're all part of the biodiversity in your yard. definitely should know if there's any invasives, because you need to get rid of those. But you definitely need to know, oh, I have oak trees here, I have pine trees here. I also have people that say, I don't like the pine trees, take them all down. Okay? Pine trees are part of the ecosystem. And I think we have that big disconnect from when we learned about ecosystems when we were kids. We learned that, you know, ecosystem, you take one part out of an ecosystem and it collapses. Well, that's what's happening. Okay? We're taking these things out. We don't like pines, so we take them out. And then when you don't like those, pines, then you are getting rid of 1,000 insects that feed on those pines. And those insects are being fed, are being eaten by the birds. 40% of our songbirds have gone away. So since 1976, 40% of our songbirds. It's because we're taking their food away. So biodiversity. Think before you take that milkweed out. Anybody know what the milkweed feeds? The monarch butterflies. And there's a big issue with them right now. They're going away. And I have clients who say, you didn't pull that milkweed. No. Well, I don't want that milkweed in my garden. So I'll dig it up and I'll put it somewhere else in their garden. Keep the milkweed. Monocultures. Let's see, think of it this way. A forest has many native species. They all work together with no interaction from man. You go out in the forest and they're all happy. Nobody's out there spraying Roundup or, you know, fertilizing. Monocultures, cornfields. When I first started designing years ago, I did a lot of monocultures and a lot of species like burning bush and stuff, and like, you know, monocultures, rows of things. But the more species you have in your garden, the better off you are. If you have species of plants that bloom early, for instance, Lenten rose, a helleborus, that blooms very early. Forsythia blooms very early. Okay? You are starting that pollination. You are starting that garden going. So think of that. And a way to do that is to go to the garden center every couple of weeks. See what's in bloom and plant what's in bloom every couple of weeks. I do that for a few of my maintenance clients. So we always have those pollinators, those bees buzzing around, and other insects that are going to take care of the bad ones. Our need to remove species, I just talked about that. Pine trees are big because we don't want them ruining our lawn. But if you know, I'm not saying don't take them down, but leave some out in the woods. They're important. Companion plants. Anybody know what companion plants are? Anybody vegetable garden? Do a vegetable garden? Companion plants are plants that actually like to be next to each other. Okay? Plants that will, for instance, nasturtiums, okay, will keep other bugs away. Marigolds will keep other bugs away. There's a lot of companion plants. There's plants that will grow better. If you put your tomatoes and your green beans together, or tomatoes and basil together, okay, they grow better rather than if you were to separate them. So there's companion plants. There's beneficial plants. For instance, alliums, which are ornamental onions, putting them under the apple trees. It helps in preventing apple scab, a disease on your apples, scabs on your apples. Not that you can't eat the apples, but it does cut down on apple scab. Clover. Clover starts the bees going. And clover is a great thing, and that helps in apples. That helps protect some of the insects that attack apples. There's all sorts of things. And I just talked about succession plants for pollination. Keeping that pollination going. A lot of times you have a garden and it looks really good in June, you know, and then in July there's this big puff of beautiful flowers, and then in August you have nothing. And that's when you want to be going to the garden center and you want to be getting those plants that are in bloom and keeping those pollinators going. Because that's all going to help, that's all going to be beneficial in you not using pesticides, in you not using that quick fix. So ecosystems and habitats, a biological community that includes plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, and all living organisms. Non-living environments include the soil, the air, the sun, the rain. You need that all for an organic garden, all necessary for ecosystems to function. As organic gardeners, we should maintain these precious ecosystems for our wildlife, our gardens, and bottom line, ourselves. Because Earth sustains us. And we have to get back to that. We need to respect the earth. Native plants. And so many times I get, I don't really want a lot of native plants in my designs. Native plants are in harmony with our environment. They bring in the native insects, they bring in the native birds. There's something we have to have in our environment. I have some clients who we just kind of put a bed in the back and just let all the weeds grow. Just for insects and pollinators and, you know, just to have that native habitat there. And then the rest of the yard, we try to do with natives. When I do a design, I try to incorporate at least a quarter natives in it. There are some of my clients who do nothing but natives. So they were naturally here. They like it here. They attract native insects, they attract native birds, and our native birds and our native insects will keep the bad things at bay. So we alter our native habitats. As a horticulturist, I think we're really, sometimes I don't like to call myself a horticulturist, because what we did was we bring in all of these alien species from all over the world because they were pretty. And now some of these alien species are choking out our native species. So we did it. Indigenous choices. You know, you can go to the garden center and there's some native plants. You know, it'll be labeled native, but you know, geez, is it native to New England? Colorado blue spruce, do you think it's native to New England? No, it's native to Colorado. Okay? Japanese barberry. Okay, where do you think that's native to? Japan. That's when you really have to think, maybe I don't want to buy this plant. Cultivar debates, I'm not going to get into the cultivar debates and the GMOs. Everybody has opinions about those. Any native plant would be safe for your garden if grown in the right plant for the right place environment. And that is so key in an organic garden. Do not try to put a plant that needs to be dry into a wet spot in the air in your garden. And the way to do that is to know the plant before you buy it. Do not buy the plant and then put it somewhere and see it fail. Have a plan. It's so much easier to have a plan. Let's see, next. I already did that. I went back, I guess. I have pretty pictures coming up too. Invasive plants and insects, invasives. When I talk about invasives, can anybody name an invasive species that we have in New Hampshire? Pretty purple
Burning
stuff.
bush. Burning bush?
Burning bush. How many of you have a burning bush in your yard? And how many love it?
I do.
Okay. Let me tell you about a burning bush, just so maybe you'll take that burning bush out, okay? I have a client, okay, what happens with invasive species is that they are choking out your native species. So what happens with a burning bush, and if you go down to Connecticut and walk through the woods, you will see nothing but burning bush. That they're taking down trees because it is choking out the native plant material. If you go to NHDI in Concord and you look at the bittersweet is taking down trees. It's an invasive species. And when you look at the bittersweet, it's the Japanese bittersweet. It's not the American bittersweet, it's the Japanese bittersweet. We took it out of its natural environment and brought it here. So, burning bush, case in point. Went to a client's, she wanted her whole yard done, and we're still there 5 years later. I'm still there. We did a 5-year plan. She had 2 big, beautiful burning bushes in the yard. And I said, what do you think we should do with these burning bushes? I love these burning bushes. They're beautiful. Oh. I said, but not very good for the environment. I don't care, I love them. Okay? We walked out in her woods, she's got woods all around, burning bushes all through the woods. Okay? So when you look at a burning bush, and she had, I'm gonna say 8 by 8 foot burning bushes, all of those burning bushes, all of them get these flowers on the stems, okay? Each one of those flowers turn into a berry, and the berry gets eaten by the birds, and the birds poop them out in the woods, and they're choking our native species out. Purple loosestrife, anybody know what purple loosestrife is? The purple flowers that you see along the side of the road near a wetland. Okay, you know what purple loosestrife is. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? It's so beautiful that people dig it up. Each of those seed heads, one seed head, has 250,000 seeds on it. What that does is those seeds get dispersed, and this is choking out our natural cattails that we have, okay, the native cattails that we have. But not only that, it takes out the oxygen out of the water and kills fish. So when we have all of this purple loosestrife in a wetland, it is sucking out the oxygen out of the water, and it is killing not only our fish, but everything else that's in the water, the billions of organisms that are in the water. I'm not saying it